Hello everyone, and welcome to our first writing video here on Mr. Shamas Teachers. Today we're going to continue on the theme of our first guided reading text, Hunter Hunted. If you haven't watched that, by all means go watch it now. Otherwise you can just carry on. All you need to know is that one of the main characters of that text is potentially a werewolf. And that's the inspiration for today's writing task, which is an explanation text about how a man turns into a werewolf. Now you're going to need to click the link in the video description down there to get a couple of files before you go much further. In the next part of the video, we're going to be looking at a model text, which is all about how a vampire turns into a bat. And let's not talking about these modern vampires who are all lovesick teenagers. Oh, Edward, I love you so. It's about a classic Dracula-style vampire who turns into a bat and goes out in search of blood. So please download that text now. It's called Vampire Explanation Model, and as I said, the link for it just underneath this video. Once you've downloaded it, give it a read through, think about maybe what makes it an explanation text, and we'll discuss some of those features when you're done. So, a classic explanation might often begin with the title in the form of a question, and our model doesn't disappoint. Let's not forget the use of that question mark. Might as well show you know how to use it, right? And now I've already given you the title of our piece of writing, but I wanted to make sure that you'd notice that this is a common feature. Now we need to talk about tense. For this particular explanation, the tense makes it clear that vampires are a thing that exists now, even if we know really they don't. It's all written in the present tense. We can tell by the verbs. Vampires are, they hide, they feed, they transform. It's not a past tense thing. And that stays throughout the whole text. Make sure you follow that today when you do your own piece of writing. Now, let's look at the introduction paragraph. The first sentence tells us what a vampire is, and that's going to be a good strategy in your text as well. Except instead of telling the reader what a vampire is, you can talk about a werewolf. Luckily for you, you could use the whole structure of this paragraph for your own introduction. So I'm just going to leave you with that thought, really. Just remember, first sentence, what is a werewolf? And then maybe a couple more that go into a bit more detail. So let's turn our attention to the next 3 paragraphs all at once. Each one of them is about a separate part of the transformation. The first paragraph is all about the ears. You should be able to work out the main subject of that, and the next 2 paragraphs by their topic sentence, which I often call a flag sentence because it sticks a flag in the ground and claims that paragraph for itself. If that first sentence mentions the ears, I know I'm expecting the rest of the paragraph to follow that topic. So why not pause now? Can you see how the next couple of paragraphs work? Now, this model is quite good in that it doesn't just tell me the vampire shrinks, it gives me more detail. It tells me an eventual size. It tells me why this part of the process is particularly painful. And you need to be thinking when you write yours, one more thing. What one extra piece of information can you give to extend this piece of writing and sound like you know what you're talking about? Another thing this example does well is provide links between the paragraphs that really help it flow. We start with a first, a simple time connective. The next paragraph starts with before very long. It tells me how the 2 ideas are linked. This one happens, and before very long, this does. Now, the next example is actually even better, because it mentions the previous change within it. Having shrunk in size, which is the last change described, the vampire's wings start to develop. You're going to need to use connectives well to add enough flow to your writing. Another way we might try to get some flow, though, is by avoiding excessive repetition. We can use pronouns like they or it to try and prevent using that word. Now in this example, the word that might come up too often is vampires. This example does well in the conclusion because it talks instead about this synonym phrase, this killing machine, stopping us having to use the word vampire again. But I think actually this example could be improved a little. There are a few too many mentions of vampires for my taste, and that's something I'll leave you to think about. So now we come to the conclusion. That's a bit of a what happens next sort of feel. Once all of these transformations have taken place, this is what happens. The changes are finished and now the vampire does this. So once again, I'd be using that same sort of structure if I were about to try the werewolf example, because the two things are nicely similar. The next thing you're going to need is the short werewolf transformation video. Once again, follow the link down there to find it. Give it a watch and then open up the werewolf writing preparation document as well, because there you'll find some question prompts to think about and the planning table I'm about to start filling in as an example. I'm only really going to focus in on the central paragraphs of the plan for this text, simply because the introduction and the conclusion can be really easily adapted from the model. Now, if you want to go your own way with the opening and closing, by all means do, but if you're not sure, stick to the model and you really can't go wrong. So we're now going to think about some of the changes that we saw in that video. Now, it doesn't matter if you play with the order of those changes. After all, it wasn't really a documentary. You're not really David Attenborough, I'm afraid. Unless, of course, you're watching David, in which case, thank you for your years of service in public broadcasting. Anyway, I'm now going to show you a little example of how to use that planning table. So here we are in the Word document, and if we scroll down past the prompt questions, you will find the planning table. Now, as you can see, I've gone with an order of face, then hands and feet, then body shape. As I said before, it doesn't matter what order you go. But I'm going to think about the face, and I'm going to think I want to add something about the eyes, I'm going to add something about the ears, and I want to add something about the mouth. I think three or so changes is probably plenty for one paragraph. Of course, my topic sentence for this is going to have to talk about the face rather than any one of these three individual things. So what about the eyes? Well, I think they're going to change shape. Maybe they sharpen at the edges. I think it's worth saying that the iris turns yellow. The iris, of course, being the colourful part of the eye. Maybe I can make up a detail. That one more thing. There's a chemical change that improves the eyesight, so let's have it happening for a reason. Maybe now I can see in the dark. Why not? That makes good sense, doesn't it? Now let's think about the ears for a moment. Perhaps they sharpen at the tips. They grow extra hair, sure. And they become twitchy. And maybe I'll make up an extra detail. But the hearing is now 10 times better than before. We can make up some similar sort of details for the mouth as well. I want to think about how those teeth can happen. So I think maybe if the jaw clenches, so that means he sort of really tightens his jaw up and he grinds his teeth together. That grinding of the teeth maybe sharpens them into deadly canines. Using a bit of the language I want to use in the main text, but not worrying too much about it for the moment. Let's have one extra detail as well. Let's talk about his saliva. Yes, the saliva is highly acidic. Why ever not? Maybe that's the kind of information I want to include about the face. With hands and feet, I'm going to come up with some similar sort of examples of what I'm going to say for those. And with the body shape, I think things to focus on might include the spine, which we know is going to go sort of crooked. Maybe his increased muscle. We saw him getting super strong. Let's make up a detail out of those shortened arms. Those are the things that I would now look to explore in just a touch more detail when it comes to the writing of this plan. So once you have your plan sorted, if you scroll a little further down, you will find the WALT and WILF for this piece of writing. As you can see, we're writing explanation text. We know that already about werewolf transformation. And just as we've discussed in this video, the things that we'll really be looking for in this piece of writing, you're maintaining that present tense all the time. You're using time connectives to link the ideas, and you've used clear paragraphs for the different stages of the transformation. Lastly, really interesting extra details, and one more thing. What else can you say about that stage of the transformation to make it sound like you're really, really knowledgeable about it? So, the title's written for you underneath. All you got to do now is write. So, good luck. See what you can do. I can't wait to see what some of you come up with. Please feel free to send them in. Make sure we see them. Enjoy.